Welcome to Akihabara, one half electronic town, one half otaku paradise. Here you can find anything from old mini disc players to retro games to maid cafés to plastic models and any kind of anime and video game character good that you can imagine. Akihabara has a long history of being a place that is popular with otaku, starting in the 80s with ham radio and TVs, VCRs, and selling anime and software. And as time moved on, it became more and more of a place where otaku congregated to go purchase any kind of goods that was related to the type of hobby they had. And just like Disney, Akihabara allows visitors to interact with the animated characters of their dreams, and yet in a real way. From Gundam robots to girls in sailor outfits, people can go to maid cafés to interact with simulated versions of their characters, but in real space. 3D plastic models of simulated anime girls or cutting-edge dating software allows otaku to interact with the women of their dreams, even if they are but figments of their imagination. And the sexualized imagery and the maid cafe are some of the more controversial aspects of what can be found in Akihabara. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's now May of the year 2000, and we are looking at the streets of an Akihabara that has not fully transitioned into the otaku mecca of today. The sign in blue and white in front of you says Gundam Plastic Models and is catering to the budding otaku movement. Now, otaku had been electronics geeks and had started to come to the smaller software stores in Akihabara. So alongside VHS decks and new DVD players, vendors were starting to sell anime materials in VHS and DVD forms increasingly to go along with their electronic sales. But what my traveling companion and I came to Akihabara for was not the anime, but the mini-disc recorders and the slimline CD players, as the MP3 and CDR technology was still in its infancy, and we liked our portable devices. iPads, iPods, iPhones were just a glimmer in Steve Jobs' imagination. And like a department store, each floor of this shop was dedicated to a certain technology: TV and DVD, portable electronic devices, personal computers, etc. Other floors included digital electronic musical instruments and anime DVD and anime-related software. New developments in home theater were all the rage. DVD with 5.1 surround sound, flat panel displays, high-definition monitors, even rear-projected large screens became available, but with a high cost that recent graduates such as ourselves in those days could not even dream of affording. So this one is the Tokyo Radio Department store. On the other side of the station. This is one of my favorite places that remains from old Akihabara, and this is the Palace of Parts, and we're in the radio department. Inside this building there are multiple local shops that people rent out, and that's why many of them are shuttered, because I got there kind of late. But we can find all sorts of maker-oriented, computer-oriented, or simple regular parts that you might have for building a radio, capacitors and resistors, those types of things that you might find at an old Radio Shack back in the day. Well, here you can find it all. And yet, just down the street, you can find AKB48 and listen to a concert of these young women that are super popular with otaku. And it's the handheld camera phone, or now the smartphone, that allowed otaku to snap images of their favorite characters from AKB48 and take them home and share them. And if you need something, just ask. Chances are guys like him will have exactly what you need. And we can see the roots of the ham radio orientation of the Otaku here. Now, ham radio has gone somewhat out of style because we have internet-related chat and online interactive services that we didn't used to have, but long ago, that's what the ham radio did. And of course, now retro games. This has grown up in the last 10 or so years. Prior to then, nobody seemed to care much about aging Nintendo hardware. And even here you can see American import games, and now you see Super Nintendo and Super Famicom games, and a number of converters to allow you to play with your retro systems on contemporary televisions, with various conversion options and extension options, even memory conversion options. Just kind of hanging out in here is a little Neo Geo system. On this wall were Famicom cartridges, the Japanese name for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Notice the different form factor and how colorful they are. This is awesome, my friends.先生、はい、中古ミニディスクとかミニディスク機械を探してるんですけど、この辺にはあるんでしょうか？
音楽のミニディスク。
はい。
この辺りミニディスク扱ってるとこちょっとないと思うんですよ。
そうですか。
音楽系になっちゃうんで、まだどちらかっていうと、ちょっと待って、ミニディスクでしょ。まだハードオフとかの方が見つかるんじゃないかな。
そっかそっか。わかりました。結構古いんだからね。
結構音楽のハードウェア使ってる店で秋葉原でそんなないんですよ。
そうか。そうでね。
まだ本当にハードオフとか回った方が見つかりやすいです。
そうですか。じゃあハードオフに行ってみよう。ありがとうございます。
はい、ありがとうございます。
So it's all old games now. No mini discs. Great. Oh yeah. As you can tell from my excitement, I'm also a big fan of retro computer hardware, and this place had the jackpot of Japanese retro computers. Wonderful PC-98 as well as Windows machines, floppy disks, keyboards, mice, cables, you name it, you could find it here. And they even had a great selection of laptops. Who knew what kind of condition they were in, but they were so cheap I almost wanted to pick one up myself. And here we have specially packaged motherboards for around $15, including CPUs. And these are the old laptops. And I searched through the bins and I was able to find a couple Panasonic Lifebooks mixed in with these Fujitsu netbooks. These Panasonic Lifebooks were some of the neatest, lightest Windows computers you could find. Sanwa arcade parts for Retro Pi with Raspberry Pi, custom built joysticks, you name it, you could find it here. This was just your average rainy Saturday night in July when it's the rainy season in Japan, so everyone had an umbrella. And we are on our way to one of my favorite parts of old Akihabara Denden town. There's a building that has a number of small cubicles inside where people can sell various goods that they have, and the shopkeepers will keep a record of whose consignment items were sold and get them their cut of the deal when they're done. But in the bottom floors of this building there are multiple long hallways filled with little vendor stalls that have all kinds of electronic parts. When I was trying to find a fuse for an old Hitachi radio that a friend of mine had, they had it. And when I couldn't figure out what was wrong with the radio, they had a number of suggestions. So the old radio geeks are still available and can still be found and consulted for whatever kind of electronics project you might have if you're interested in such things. But let's take a look at this radio center, which is what we're approaching right now. Another favorite pastime is to go to the gachapon machines and pump coins in them and turn the dial to see what surprise item will come out based on the character or the series that you're interested in. The name gachapon comes from the sound gacha 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 pon when the ball comes out after twisting around the coin mechanism. And these are a few of the nostalgia boxes on the first floor here, where you can see coins and watches and other items that people are selling in consignment. Now we're going to the e-boxes of the zone of the Showa nostalgia. All of these items date from anywhere between 1930 to 1989, the Showa period. There's also probably some 1990s things thrown in too. But you can find old transistor radios from the beginning of Sony's production to the last slimline cassette Walkman that they churned out.
Okay.
While some places were closing, other places were just getting started. And truly, the lights and the bustle of Akihabara last long until the last train.
一番最初に入ってすぐのところ、昨日よりケーキがなくなっていたりとかね、やっぱケーキなんでね、UFO キャッチャーの中なんで溶けちゃったりとかするので、ケーキとかはなくなっていたりはするんですが、そんな、チュンチュンの誕生日を祝った祭壇がまだ店頭入ってすぐのところでは、飾ってありますので、ぜひこちらの方も、見ていただければと思います。
And now we're moving into a store that characterizes the newer Akihabara, which is dedicated to anime and video game character goods, as well as plastic models and figurines. And boy, was it jam-packed, full of every series and every maker that you could think of.
ますか。ありがとうございます。
All right, my friends, this is Super Potato. Gotta take the elevator. We're gonna get on up, or we could take the stairs. But I like Japanese elevators; they're awesome. Look at this. Third floor retro games. Fourth floor. And there's an arcade up at the top. Oh my goodness. Yes, my friends. We've arrived at Super Potato. Famicom, Super Famicom, Saturn, PC Engine. What do we have? Neo Geo underneath his hand here. Oh, this is going to be awesome. And just take a look at the sheer amount and variety of goods that they have put in one place. Plush Kirby's, little Nintendo characters and figurines, lockets, charms, fans, lunch boxes, a variety of things that aren't for sale. Old retro connectors for Super Famicom, Nintendo Famicoms, Super Nintendo, Nintendo Entertainment Systems for the USA even. Top slot loaders, which are hard to get. You have things plugged in on display. I'm taking out a Super Famicom right now, and these were quite reasonable for a price, about $40. So you could take that home and play any Japanese SNES game that came out without the US version. And there's one with a floppy disk in it so that you could copy your game ROMs. And various old refurbished controllers and connectors. So any type of retro gaming for Nintendo that you could imagine, they had it. Kirby goods. Yes. There we go. Dreamcasts. PC Engine. Look at all these PC Engine cards. Oh my goodness. I have to get these. It's like $3 or $10 for this card set. Of course, singles the Joker. Little necklace. Oh, these are disc games here. Oh my goodness, look at all these disc games. Eggerland. So if you had a Famicom adapter or bought one of their Famicoms for about $100, you'd be in business. If there's a Nintendo Famicom game in this world that you want and couldn't get a hold of, this would be the place to come. It's unbelievable. Alright, I'm itching to get to the Super Famicom side here. Oh, there we go. Goodness, it just keeps going. There's all these Dreamcast games. If you're a fan of games, this went on forever and ever. You probably don't need to see the extended cut, but maybe you do. In case you want to see more, you'll have to come on a Maymester and go to Super Potato with me. Wonder Swan. How cool is that? There's all the games for it. I've often wanted one of those, but I don't know if it's worth that money. I'm gonna pay a premium here. I love the not-for-sale artifacts, but let's head upstairs. Alright, let's go check out the retro arcade. Oh, the snake. Oh. Just look at all these retro machines. Street Fighter 2, Metal Slug. The list goes on. We've got top scrollers, sports games. We got things from the 16-bit era and moving forward into the 90s and into the 2000s. There's a couple of geeks back there in the corner enjoying themselves, sitting down, chilling out. Here's a Pong, but not like a regular Pong. This one is actuated with motors and spindles, and it's Pong in real life. Talk about a third-order simulation. And we have a number more fighting games. And look at all these retro snacks and sodas that younger Japanese kids from the 70s and 80s would have been enjoying now, remembering in their 30s and 40s, maybe even 50s, as they sit down and take a step through back in time machine here. Look at that, the King of Fighters from 1998. These games are exceeding 20 years old, so obviously some of them are out of service. Sometimes the chips break. Sometimes the capacitors go out. They need to fix a board before they can put it back in the machine. But notice most of the cabinets are the same, and these are the kind of cabinets you would have seen in a Japanese arcade back in the day. Just a beautiful recreation of that experience. Now back on the street, we still see traces of the old Akihabara behind the station here. These are mostly a number of computer stores. Electronic stores are not as popular as they used to be because people are buying primarily computer electronics, and iPods have gone over to iPhones. No more mini discs, no more Walkman. Now you can see where people go to buy parts, and walking down this street there are a few computer dealers, and when you go in, you might be surprised that all of the parts are arranged in a way that we wouldn't necessarily see them in America. We are used to Best Buy, or we're used to going online to Newegg or even Amazon to go buy parts. But here you can still walk in and browse like an old CompUSA, but even better. You can find parts for any computer from PC era, hard drive. You can find retro hardware too. And if you've ever been to a micro center in the States, it approximates this feel, but it's just floors and floors going up and up of all these computers. And so a lot of computer otaku would come down to Akihabara to find the newest and greatest hardware, to purchase that hardware for a pretty decent price as well, and then build the rig of our dreams. But as we get ready to leave this computer store and go back onto the street, we're going to see yet again more people who are trying to grab customers for their maid cafes. So there are representatives of the different kind of maid cafe that people might be interested in who are telling you what their prices are, where they're located, giving away pamphlets. Already we encountered a few of them on our trip. I politely took their materials and moved on. It's really not my thing. But this one here in particular is quite good, as she's a ninja.
Oh, thank you. Do you know ninja? I am a ninja.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard.
Thank you. I can do ninja magic. Like
Oh my goodness.
lightning performance and fire magic.
Fire magic. Oh
And
boy.
I can do ninja crash board
You
magic.
can do a ninja crash board. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
very exciting ninja cafe.
All
and
right.
we have Japanese food and Japanese drink.
Wow.
You can throw shuriken.
Oh,
Shuriken, do you
really?
know?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
stars.
ninja's weapon. Yeah. You
Wow.
can throw shuriken darts.
Wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
very
Thank you. It's very exciting. Wow. All right.
And
Cool.
so this is our system.
Uh-huh. So, I see. So you sit and drink. Okay. Oops. All right. Well, thank you for telling me. Have a good day.
Okay.
One of the reasons I'm not interested in maid cafes is a number of the Japanese female informants that I've talked to have told me that these maid cafes have an association with the post-war sexual service industry that many young Japanese women who had no money or were sitting in a bombed-out Tokyo felt that they needed to appeal to rich people or to servicemen in order to make a buck or two, and would go to cabaret halls and would also sometimes sell their bodies. So the maid cafes have this connotation. So you are paying for a service for a young woman to sit with you and maybe fulfill some kind of fantasy of yours, which does have sexual connotations. And so I always think it's best, especially for foreigners, to avoid these places. But then again, some like them because they're experiencing the Akihabara culture, and the people who are working there are making some money, and they're not allowed to be touched. So it is relatively innocent, but it does carry that connection for a number of Japanese women, so it ought to be kept in mind. Those are some parts of the new Akihabara, but what we're looking at here is the remnants, again, of the old Akihabara, where people come to find discount electronics, used electronics, and other parts for their hobbies, which you can easily find in the back streets if you're looking. Here ends our short tour of Akihabara Old and New. I hope the images and concepts that you've seen here will help you understand this part of Tokyo, as well as some of the otaku culture found herein.